which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're here for a presentation by Vanguard Renewables at the Kurtland Farm at 4366 Main Street.
Hi, everybody. Hi, my name is Sarah Morrissey. I work with Vanguard Renewables. I am the development manager working on this proposed project, which will be located at Kurtland Farms. We are joined by Jerry Kurtz, who is the property owner at Kurtland Farms. Jerry, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Say hi. I'm not sure if many of you know me. Lived in the community my entire life. Our farm has been in our family since 1920. Dairy farm ever since then. Started out. My great-grandfather milking 12 cows by hand, and today we milk about 300 cows with robotic dairy and our tie-stall facility. As you know, in our community is growing. The Route 23 runs right between, splits our property, and we farm on either side of it. So over the last 5-10 years, I've thought about what the future is going to look like for me and my family on our farm. We've had to look at different opportunities. We can't continue to do things the way that we've always done them. Obviously, being a very central part of our community and things that are changing, traffic, different hurdles that we face. And so we've always been looking at opportunities, things to diversify as we move forward. And about 2.5 years ago, we were able to connect with Vanguard Renewables and had a conversation about what it would look like to put an anaerobic digester on our farm. And a number of reasons that would be beneficial for us. It would allow us to diversify, have a diverse revenue stream on our farm to hopefully still be around in 100 years in our community. It allows us to capture the methane from the cows that currently right now we're just flaring off most of that. It actually allows us to capture that and turn it into renewable natural gas, which can be used. Environmentally, from an environmental perspective as well, on our farm we have about 4 springs that are headwaters for the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And so, over the last 20-25 years, primarily my dad, now also myself, we've been using farming practices that have, taken into mind and account for the area that we're actually farming in, and within our community, be good neighbors, manage the soil, manage the farm well. And so this kind of fits into that stream, thinking about, okay, how can we leave this in a way that's better, in our community, for our families, for, in the future. And being a farm that's in farmland preservation, in our community right now, there's a lot of land that's disappearing. And so our hope is that we can look at ways outside of the box to maintain a family farm, which we've been for 100 years and still are, family owned. My wife and I recently just stepped into ownership on the farm in the past 12 months and maintain that moving forward. So Sarah's going to talk a little bit more about this project, some of the ins and outs, but I just want to introduce myself so you can, if any of you don't actually know me, know my family. I'm not sure if my dad walked in here. No, he didn't yet. I believe he's coming tonight. There he is right now. He's the one that really, if any of you know a little bit about our farm, the robotic milking facility, we've hosted a number of tours there. We milked about 220 cows in there. Built that 10 years ago. He's the one that's really kind of allowed us to take this, huge step forward. Now I'm looking ready to put my imprint upon the farm and continue to stay within our community. So with all that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. She's going to talk more about the details, the logistics of everything. And but yeah, if you have any other questions, any words for me or my father, feel free to grab us as well. So thank you.
And feel free to interrupt me as I go if you've got questions, or we can talk at the end, whatever's easier. Do you mind if I just click? I don't want to jump in your computer, but all right, so Vanguard Renewables. There are a number of companies that build anaerobic digesters on dairy farms. One of the things that we do slightly differently is that we build them, we own them, and we operate them. Which means we remain 100% responsible for them from the time they are proposed until the time that they are decommissioned. We work with farm families in order to have a lease area that we can operate. In this particular picture, this is an operational farm up in Massachusetts, and the lower end of that picture shows our lease area. But we'll go into some details in a little bit. So, Vanguard Renewables. We have won a number of awards over the last few years for the farms that we've been involved with. We have farms in Hadley, Massachusetts, Rutland, Massachusetts. We have our biggest facility currently is in Salisbury, Vermont. You know, we are able to, by operating these facilities, we're able to capture renewable natural gas that would normally be lost to the atmosphere from dairy manure and also from food waste. This allows us to adjust food waste streams from going into landfills to going into a usable source, not only on the renewable natural gas side, but it also creates products that can be used on the farm in a beneficial way. Excuse me. So, this is our portfolio. Our operational facilities are currently in the Northeast. As mentioned, we've got Rutland, Hadley, Deerfield, Haverhill, Massachusetts, and Spencer, Massachusetts. Two of those farms are actually owned by the same family. They liked us so much that they let us do a second one. There are write-ups in the packets that I put on everybody's spots for the site in Salisbury, and then the two that are owned by the Jordan family that are the basic family we have two farms with. We also have a larger facility up in Salisbury, Vermont. There's a couple of differences there. The sites in Massachusetts, we are not allowed to put renewable natural gas into gas pipelines according to the state of Massachusetts. We may, however, use a generator and burn it to create electricity and put electricity back in the grid. Vermont allows us to put the natural gas directly into a pipeline, and it's actually a more efficient system because you're not burning that off, you're using it. We can create renewable electricity through solar panels, through wind. You know, we can't create renewable natural gas through a lot of other sources. It's more efficient to use it this way. We also operate our organics receiving facility in Agawam, Massachusetts, which is how we depackage food and are able to take food into our system that might not otherwise be readily available for use because it is already contains packaging around it. So, how does it work? So, the way that it works is Kurtland Farms is kind enough to give us their cow manure. We will take possession of that. It now becomes our cow manure. From off-farm, we create partnerships with food waste providers. Restaurants, grocery stores, food manufacturers, those types of things. We do not take residential food waste. We will not be picking for your trash and picking out all your old bananas or your coffee grounds, that kind of thing. We get relationships with larger providers, and that way we have a contract and we are guaranteed from them that they meet the requirements that we put place into our contracts. We will not take hazardous waste. We will not take material from trucks that have transported sewage. We will not take material from trucks that have transported medical waste. These are all existing requirements of our food waste partners, which helps us to protect the food quality that is going into these digesters. So, food waste comes into our facility. We have an organics receiving area. It consists of a building where, if needed, food is depackaged. It also consists of above ground storage tanks where liquid clean waste can be discharged directly in. Things like grease out of grease traps from a restaurant. That's one of the things that we'll take. We also end up with a fair amount of brewery waste, so we might end up with containers containing beer. Manure and the food waste are mixed together in the anaerobic digester. It lives in that facility for about 26 days, and the food waste is moved around and heated to between 102 and 104 degrees. The methanogens in the manure help to break down that food waste, and in doing so generates a renewable natural gas, a biogas. The biogas collects in those cartoon version of the black bubbles at the top of the digesters, which is then we can off-take, purify, and take it from biogas to renewable natural gas. The only difference really is the methane concentration in biogas is about 65%. The methane concentration in renewable natural gas is closer to 67 to 68%. So we have a purification system that runs through, and then it is off-take. It is taken by a utility, either via direct pipeline or, if needed, we will put in a trucking point where it will be discharged into a truck, and the truck will take the material off-site. The remainder of the material, so the solid and liquid that is remaining, we call digestate. It comes out of a digester. The digestate can be farm applied. We do a couple of things with it. We can run the digestate through a screw press and also nutrient management as needed, and we end up with a liquid material and we end up with a solid. The first round of this, the solids can be used as cow bedding, and there is, for anybody who wants to see what this material looks like, that's that bad boy. This is the bedding material. So if anybody, Jared currently beds on separated solids from his manure, same idea. It has a earthy odor. I mean, I'm not going to say it's smell-free, but if you stick your nose in it, you're going to smell it. But unless you all are going to go lie down with the cows in the barn, I don't think anybody's getting all that close to it. But it has a dirty smell. Not dirty smell, dirt-like smell. Put that one right. Different words. So that's the material that's coming out of it. I know that you mentioned earlier you're a little concerned with steel. Just as a reference point. So here's one in real life. This is our digester facility up in Salisbury, Vermont. That red building in the foreground, that is one of our digesters. That second set of bubbles behind it is our second digester. Some of our older facilities, we operate a single digester. We have learned if you have two, one of them is not happy, you continue to operate the other one. Because we don't have to shut down the facility when the digester gets a tummy ache. Because digesters basically operate as giant stomachs. They're going to digest the food, they're going to put output out at the end, and the output is usable in new forms. So the way this facility works, so in this case, we do not have any packaging facility on the property. We have an in-ground hydrolyzer, which is located in the lower right corner. That has been moved to an above-ground holding tank and processing tank. Couple of reasons. One, it is much easier to repair something that is above ground that we have full access to. In-ground systems are a little bit harder to work with. So we have learned, and we've made those adjustments. The other thing is that this facility operates, this does operate an electrical generator because we do not have access to three-phase power at this site. So we were required to put a generator in place in order to have sufficient power to run this system.
Did you say there was no packaging?
Not on this site.
Oh, not on that.
Not on this site. We have one. Kurtland Farms will have one. We do not have one on this site. Now, our digestion storage in this case is being held in above ground tanks on the upper right. And the barn buildings are at the back. They have a separator building as well that separates, in this case they separate pre-digestion and they remove the solids from the manure before it enters our facility. It can be done in either way, it doesn't particularly matter. They have a nutrient management system that brings the nutrient load in the liquid digestate down so that it is more manageable for the farm. That is also our plan here, given the land base present. In the middle of that picture, right under the nutrient management, you see a bunch of little tanks and pipes. That is our gas upgrader system. So that system allows us to remove any carbon dioxide, any water, and any hydrogen sulfide that might exist in biogas before it enters the pipeline and its uptake is taken off by the pipeline provider. So this is kind of the real world example of what we're doing. This, if any of you don't know, is Kurtland Farms. This is the lease area that we are currently proposing. The roadway has been, the driveway access point has been moved. I think, Scott, since last time you saw it, you guys have made a request. The township requested it be moved across from the fire station. So we also adjusted the whole lease area because of that in order to accommodate a new layout plan. But this is our proposed layout. So in this case, those two big circles, 1 and 2 at the middle top, those are our digesters. The dark circle is the actual size of the digester. The dotted line around it is safety buffer areas, so that if vehicles need to get in there and get around it, they can. Number 4 is one of our holding tanks, the hydrolysis tanks, so 4, 5, 6, and 7 will all hold various types of either liquids coming in or materials that are being mixed prior to entering the digester. Number 21 is our organics receiving area building. The food waste will come into that building. Nothing is depackaged on the exterior of that building. Nothing is offloaded on the exterior of that building, with the exception of any liquids going into those holding tanks, in which case they are connected directly with a locking interconnect, and so no food waste material will exist on the exterior of that building. I'll say that as many times as we need to, because I think it is important. So the rest of the facility, number 22, is the proposed new lagoon area. Because we are bringing in more material, we will need to hold more liquid. And then at the lower left corner, that is our nutrient management building, and also where Jared currently and will continue to take his bedding material for his cows. Number of other buildings, we've got things like a CO2 recovery area. We plan to capture the CO2 that is being taken out of biogas. We have technical containers which will hold things like the monitoring equipment for the digesters and all of the equipment. There is an emergency flare, that is number 15. That is a safety device. If something happens and we are not able to off-take gas for a period of time. The biogas upgrader is damaged, the pipeline is damaged, we have something that we cannot control. We have to be able to release methane safely. We do that by releasing it to the flare. Releasing methane into the atmosphere is a very bad thing for us to do and is not good for the environment. If we burn it, we're able to reduce the environmental impacts of the air. That is being looked at by DEP right now in an air discharge permit. So, questions, concerns, you want me to keep going? We'll come back.
I think I mentioned earlier, we currently are flaring,
Yep.
our lagoon is covered, and we currently are flaring off our methane, so that is
Yeah.
something that
So
we
that
currently
is-
are
yeah.
doing on our farm.
They do have one in existence, yeah. Alright, I'll keep talking. So, we showed you the red digesters in the previous picture. We've changed providers. This is the look of the new digesters. They can be painted, and we have discussed with Jared that they will be color-coded to match his farm. But the digestion occurs within that silver wall. And then in that domed top, that's where the methane and the biogas collect. Now, another thing we have learned in our time, our old digesters had single membranes. Single membranes have a habit of getting poked. And somebody asked me once while I was on site, what happens if somebody shoots it? And I went, wait, really? And the farmer went, oh, you know, it happened all the time. That they had, there were apparently some pesky birds hanging around, and somebody went out with a BB gun and poked a hole. Now, we're able to patch those, but less efficient. So this one actually has a double membrane. Going forward, they will all have double membranes, which means that this is a permanent safety outer layer, which is kept at that height with controlled pressure within the upper layer and the lower layer. The lower layer can rise and fall as needed with the gas production inside. We learn.
How long have you been in business?
Company has been in business about 10 years. So this is the bedding material that you all just saw and passed around. Just as reference points, this is an output. You can see one of our digesters in the back, but they've actually put that's a single membrane. They put a net over the top of it as another protective layer. This is our organics receiving area in Agawam, Mass. This is not located on a farm. The way that this system works is that because it was being shared among multiple farms, because those farms are smaller, it was more efficient to build a centrally located centrally located receiving facility, and then we send the food waste out from there. So this is sort of the inside of what it looks like. So the way the system works is, as you can see, there's packaged waste in the background of both of those photos. We will receive, for example, pallets of Hood ice cream. Something has gone wrong during the processing. They have 14 chocolate chips instead of 42 chocolate chips. It can now not be sold. It has a half a cup of sugar instead of 2 cups of sugar. It now cannot be sold. It was sitting in the back of the warehouse, and the warehouse temperature came up above the allowable food safety limits. It can now no longer be sold. It was sitting in the back of a refrigerator truck. Refrigerator truck came up to temperature. It can now no longer be sold. We got an entire load of strawberries that drove in all the way from California to Massachusetts. Strawberries had to be kept at, I believe it was 41 degrees. The temperature inside the tractor trailer came up to 43 degrees. Those strawberries could no longer be sold. So, normally, historically, they would go into a landfill. Now, we're able to take them. So there is a system in there. We've got, designs are changing, but the idea is generally the same, that the material can be either placed in pallets on the floor of the organics receiving area, or in some cases dumped directly onto a walking floor, which is then walked under it's sort of a rotating drum that starts to squish the packaging. The goal is to squish the packaging but not shatter the packaging. We do not want pieces of packaging ending up everywhere. We want to poke holes, we want to be able to squeeze it. If anybody in their younger years, or possibly their children, have ever jumped on a ketchup packet and knows what happens when you squeeze it and it shoots out, we're going for that. We want to get the food waste out while keeping the packaging as intact as possible. Now, this ramp on the left is actually showing the packaging that has come off of the food waste as it is taken up and put into a dumpster located within the building. What we are starting to transition to, and what we'll be doing with all of our new facilities going forward, is actually running food waste in similar cycles. So if we get things like yogurt in plastic containers. We will run all the yogurt together, so those plastic containers can now actually be recycled and not thrown away. We're able to make that separation. Now that red structure behind that ramp with the trash material on it, that is actually where a lot of the interesting work happens. Inside we have basically, and they can change it up depending on what the packaging is, which is actually kind of fun. But it looks like the back of a plopping run. So it comes through, it pokes holes in the packaging, it squeezes it through, the food waste goes out to a holding tank, and the trash comes out. One of the things that our team did during COVID, because this facility came online early on in COVID, and shockingly, what there was a lot of leftovers of was beer. Bars were closed, stadiums were closed, concerts were canceled. We had customers calling us and saying, oh my God, I have all this beer in kegs, how do we get rid of it? And so our team came up with what they call the octopus, which means they can tap 8 kegs simultaneously. Drain the beer out. We use it when we need a liquid load into this facility, so if we get packaged with cheese. Cheese does not slurry correctly without liquid added to it. And we will put it in there, and we will be able to kind of balance the load so that it flows a little bit more easily. We also find a good home for beer. So that's a general overview. Talking about food waste, what are we taking? So, generally speaking, front of house, back of house, out of restaurants, we can take. We can take packaged waste. It can be everything from milk. We are working to develop a way to handle glass bottles. Right now they are hand to package, and if they need to be hand to package to make a client happy, we will make that work. We can take watermelons that didn't sell. We take processed meat, so chicken, beef that cannot be sold in the grocery store. We do not take mortalities. We will not be accepting anything like that. We take wash water that is used to wash, fruits, vegetables before they are sold. Fats, oils, and greases, like what comes out of a grease trap, and then processed wash water. So nothing that goes in the system is hazardous. We will not allow our food partners to put anything in the system that is hazardous. Our team at the organic receiving facility can and will reject any load that they do not feel is appropriate, and they have full authority to do that. So, just a couple of farms so you can see. This is our farm in Deerfield, Mass. As we talked about, that gray inset item in the ground in the middle, that is their hydrolysis tank, and that is their single digester located behind it. And they have 4 lagoons, or 2 lagoons, one isn't present in this one, so 2 free-floating tanks. Same idea. This is another view of the Salisbury property that we looked at a little while ago. It's been in operation since 2021. As Jared mentioned, we have gotten support from the Alliance for Chesapeake Bay. They view anaerobic digesters as a good way to manage manure material. We also recently received a letter of support for this project it was from Hershey and the Center for Dairy Excellence and Land O'Lakes, all of whom think that this is a good option for small dairy farms. We've also we presented to the Orange County Farm Conservation Board. This project was presented to them on I believe it was 30th of March. I do not have the formal letter confirming, but it was approved by the board at that time. So they also said that in their mind this was considered an agricultural endeavor going forward. So, in case anybody doesn't know Jared, maybe you know one of the other happy smiling faces that lives up there. We do understand that this is a family farm. This is a farm that will continue to operate. Our goal is to not get in their way. Our goal is to make things a little bit easier for them and allow them to continue to operate as they have, and just give them maybe some more opportunities that would not otherwise be available to a small dairy farm. Anaerobic digesters for manure only are prevalent on larger farms, but you need bare minimum 3,000 cows, ideally 5,000 cows. That's not going to work in small dairy. They don't tend to operate as efficiently with much smaller loads. The food waste allows us to operate at a smaller capacity, smaller number of heads of cattle, and still be able to function. Because I'm not above bribing the room, I'm going to put in the cows that say Eagles, because I'm assuming that this is an Eagles crew. I will admit to not being a sports person, so therefore I'll cheer for your team anytime. And we hadn't had enough cows yet, so, questions, what can I answer for people, what was unclear?
Size-wise, how big of an area does it cover?
So we are leasing about 10 acres,
How many trucks a day?
between 19 and 21.
To that point, I have a question as far as the trucks too, is that all encompassing? It sounds like
Everything,
there's,
everything except for our employees. So our employee traffic plans about 10 employees, but any truck that comes on the property is calculated into that 1921 load, including if we need to off-take gas to them.
the gas to the truck, what, is it liquid, solid?
It would either be compressed or liquefied natural gas.
And is that this one's not a question for me, but I heard somebody asking it, that process of which you then convert it to whatever gas is being exported, is that all done on site then?
So
What kind of
the
equipment is there?
gas upgrading is done on site, yes. So the biogas leaves, it goes through the gas upgrader. By the time it is ready to leave the property in whatever method it leaves it in, it actually is now equivalent to the natural gas that you might burn in a natural gas stove or use in your furnace. It is the same thing. So the upgrading occurs on the property, yes. Because then we're able to do things like recapture the CO2 and find another use for it.
So you say the process takes 26 days.
The process, it lives in the digester for about 26 days.
So you're having 19 to 21 trucks a day.
Correct.
So where does that, if it takes 26 days to process, you're gonna have to store stuff outside?
No, it all goes into the digester. We feed, so the digester gets fed every day in small doses all day long. Sorry, my apologies for not including that in there. That the goal is the digester's fed, say, every 20 to 30 minutes, and material is removed from the digester along that same timeline. So that bedding material comes out in small batches throughout the day. The food goes in throughout small batches during the day. Another question that I'm expecting is going to come up is that we do not accept trucks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The facility, the digesters will run. They will run quietly, they are being monitored constantly by our team, not only locally, but also our team in, at the corporate office. So if, on the off chance something goes wrong, our team gets a call in the middle of the night, Jared doesn't get a call in the middle of the night. We will come out, we will take care of it. And sometimes it's as easy as we flip a switch, you're able to adjust it on your phone, temperature's down, we crank it up a little bit to make everything happy. So no, we are continuing processing material through that. The average hold time within the digester is about 26 days.
So then what's the purpose of the lagoons?
The lagoons is that we do have liquid material that comes out of the back end, and that liquid material needs a home.
But it's not the raw material.
It is not, it is, and you're gonna have to excuse my tiny little container, because you cannot fit more than 3 ounces of liquid on a plane. But what comes out of it is that this has not gone through the nutrient management that Jared's farm will go through, but it is we call it seawater. The goal for this is a low nutrient load, so low NPK volume.
Would they have an odor?
Have at it. I would drink it.
There is odor, but from talking with other
But
farmers that
Are you swimming in it?
talking with other farmers that have digesters, they say the odor is actually reduced about 80 to 90% compared to comparable dairy manure. So one thing that we've actually started doing over the last 3 or 4 years, pay any attention or happen to be driving by, is we actually inject the majority of our manure now at this point, primarily through drag line injection. So we actually minimize the tanks that are running back and forth as much as we can. It's more efficient, more nutrients are captured in the ground right at those growing roots. And that's something we'll continue to do more and more of as we have more material available. So the smell that's actually being stored outside is 80 to 90% less, and then less broadcast manure as well.
Well, back in the 90s, I was one of the ones that helped do farm preservation. Gary and Gene Stoppers, Hank, you were involved in that a little bit. Now, we wanted to keep the farmland, and that's one of the things I'm really concerned about. And one of the things that we have talked about, now though, is that you got a tax break. All right, now if you start selling that stuff, that's now a commercial area. That's something that needs to be discussed.
So they're not selling anything, we are.
But it's still farm preservation, you know?
It is, And the Farm Preservation Board has looked at it, and now I am repeating words that other people said. So, you know, it's not my, that
That was the whole
according,
purpose of doing farm preservation, so I just, we need to, that's something.
No, I
that we
understand.
need to discuss.
Yeah.
Right? And as far as the odor goes, you know, I know manure does smell, all right, and, you know, but I just, you know, wanna make sure that, the odor don't affect the neighbors down there, all right? You know, just like the landfill up here, you know, that one got so bad out there, we had no control of it, 'cause that's New Morgan Borough. But, you know, they ended up putting some kind of perfume thing up there, it was actually worse than the manure. I wanna make sure of that, that's why I was asking about, the address up in, New Hampshire. My wife's brother lives up here, and if it's nearby, I'm gonna have to drive past and see if it smells.
yeah, I can get your addresses, I'll have them sent through, I wanted to make sure that before I send out his address, because these are, I mean, I wouldn't give out Jared's address.
Now, once everything is done, where does all the material go? You put that in landfill then?
No, well, so Jared will take the liquids, to be land applied, because we'll be able to bring the nutrient management load down. The solids are going back into his barn as bedding, natural cycle to the material. And the material, the bedding comes out, so we don't just end up amplifying the amount of bedding over time, because it will break down the more times it goes to the digester. And then anything in the liquid or nutrient load that Jared cannot take, we will either find a home for. The goal is to be able to actually market it as fertilizer, but right now that's not an option, and our absolute last resort is landfill. They go to compost, they can go to other farms, it can be shared around with neighbors, any of that is, as long as it's in compliance with their nutrient management plan, that's all viable.
Now, the truck traffic, I saw that you moved the driveway over across from the fire company thing. The
So-
driveway?
Yeah, so just to be clear on that one, that was, I mean, at this point, there really hasn't been any submissions to the township. The letter that was produced in result of the PennDOT submission
Yeah.
was simply to state that the driveway as shown, one, it did have zoning concerns. So where it was placed, the fact that it was a second access under the main arterial of town really is against what the zoning calls for driveways. If there is an existing driveway to the property, that should be the main point of access. Now, there's a little bit of discussion to be had on where that driveway can go, and if there is two access points to a property, commercial properties look for that. So then, again, there's some discussion on where that lands exactly with what type of use. But as far as where the driveway was shown, there was concerns, one with zoning, two with the traffic, just because that's a very studied intersection for the township. They're already, we've just begun the process of looking at intersection improvements and grants, and that's one of them that we're focused on, just because there is great concerns with the volumes and issues there. So the third would be the applicant's impacts with a driveway at that location and a signal that may be subsequent to the design of what we're looking at now would probably be a lot of cost onto the resident or property owner at that location. So I just want to kind of restate that the letter was just saying that we weren't necessarily in favor, and if there were concerns with where it was placed, there still has to be a submission to review on.
Right, and
where
so,
it would best
well,
go.
taking that into account, we were willing to make the accommodation that was recommended.
Yep.
Which is fine, we can work with that. And actually, I believe it's being resubmitted, if it was not resubmitted at the end of last week, it's being resubmitted to that, any day now.
Well,
So there,
can you regulate the time of day your truck's going in and out there? Because at the evening, when that school that's at,
Right.
that's terrible down there.
So,
But,
so what we end up doing in our permits is we apply for a wider window than we will actually be operating on the off chance. Say we lose power in the middle of the day, and we had trucks come in with loads, we wanna be able to run that facility to clean out that floor before the day ends. The goal is to not store food in that facility, for any number of reasons, but also that, like, we have employees that are working in there, and they do not wanna walk in August to a building that was full of chickens since the night before. It is not pleasant for anybody, it is not safe, it is a health hazard, all of that. The only types of materials that might stay on the floor overnight are things that are not going to putresce overnight. So cases of beer, you know, if we've got some watermelons that are not sellable but not rotten, they can sit for a night. But the goal is to not leave food sitting in that facility. The goal is to clean that facility out every night. So we want to be able to operate. Now, that does not mean trucks are coming in that late. Our current system, the current facility, the first truck usually rolls in around 7:30 in the morning. The last truck is expected usually it's before 3 o'clock. Rare occasion somebody calls and says, I got a flat tire, the truck broke, I've got to change, you know, and whatever. And we may do them a little bit later, but that is an acceptance, that is not the norm. And then the facility is open on Saturdays, however, that's for our team to go in, clean, make sure, do maintenance, all that kind of work, so we should not be accepting trucks on Saturdays. So Monday through Friday.
Did I hear you right that you have a separate building that's gonna unwrap all of the food?
Correct.
And actually, the other thing gonna be coming here is the food?
The only thing that's going into that building is packaged food waste,
You
yes.
have to get rid of all the packaging.
We will get rid of all the packaging. Yep, and it is, all the packaging is removed within the building, put into a dumpster within the confines of the building. When the dumpster is full, we will pull out the dumpster, put it in a new dumpster, and that full dumpster is taken away. Now, the plan going forward is that that will also include recycling options as well. So we'll have recycling containers as well as waste dumpsters.
You just made reference to, you don't want your employees coming in the next morning to a floor full of chickens from the evening before. But you said just before that there's no dead animals.
Chicken breasts, packaged chicken breasts, sorry. A package of chicken, we will get packaged meat, but no mortalities. So it has to be considered food material.
Now, in your presentation, you had made comment that this facility doesn't have 1,000 head of cattle, and that you would have to rely more on food process. So does that mean you're gonna have more food here than obviously manure? Because it looks like the facilities up in Massachusetts, they have close to 1,000 head of cattle.
Right, and small dairies, so we do. The goal is that we'll be bringing in a more than 50% food waste manure.
But then I'm also noticing, we noticed that the pictures you have here, it doesn't look like there's many neighbors around these farms that you have, these places.
There are some. I mean, the trucks are going to drive by houses.
I mean, this right here doesn't show anybody around here. I mean, we have.
So, hold on.
I'll make a comment to that.
So the driveway access point actually is over here. That's their field. The driveway is here where the trucks are coming in.
I understand.
No, I know, but I'm saying the houses would be over here. That's their fields. Just for orientation purposes.
I'll make a comment to that. I mean, I kind of talked a little bit about it. You know, we've been here 100 years and we've, continued to farm in our community. Obviously, our desire is to stay in our community. And from my perspective, I'm, looking at, okay, what can I do just to maintain? Right now, the road that runs through our property is a liability. It's a threat. And because of our location, our access to the turnpike, access to 176 Route 10, and we're not 5 miles off Route 23, that's kind of what's allowed this to be somewhat of a conversation. And so, yeah, it does add traffic. We are close to neighbors, but we've always been close to neighbors. And as long as we're gonna have a dairy farm, there's the houses that are coming in, the number, our population isn't going down. And so I think we're trying to, how can we coexist within our community the best that we can and maintain a family farm, has a legacy. We're probably one of the oldest family-owned businesses in our community. How can we maintain that for another, 100 years and coexist together within that? So yeah, we actually, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we actually had a meeting. I'm not sure if any of you are aware that we actually invited all of our neighbors that are landlords, and some of them are here tonight, to discuss with them this project ahead of time. And they brought some questions back, and they might bring more questions tonight, I'm not sure, but we are very aware of where we sit within our community. And it's always been, with the schools, our goal is every student that graduates from Twin Valley has tours our facility at some point, and learns about a dairy operation. And that's, this is going to be even newer technology than robotic milking technology. This is, there are farms in Pennsylvania that have digesters on them. How can we educate about, what the future opportunities are within agriculture and renewable energy and doing it well? So we're trying to come up with a way that we can all coexist together while being mindful of our neighbors. And this is a big change from, a bank barn and 2 silos and 25 cows. But we live in a community that's changed a lot too over the last 25 years. So.
And I agree with you. I mean, as with your family, I'm a third generation of my family. We've been here over 100 years as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we grew up around dairy farms, so we're used to the smell of manure.
Mhm.
To me, I can't see where you're not gonna have a smell from food. I mean, rotted food. I just don't see how we're not gonna have.
Well, do you want to talk a little bit about the organics recycling facility and what's done inside that building to make
Yeah.
sure that there's no food and smell?
So to help with that, so again, all the food waste is depackaged inside, all the digestion occurs within an enclosed building. But one of the things that we do in our organic receiving building is we have currently it's carbon filter, but a filtration system that is roughly the size of a tractor trailer that processes all of the air through that building between 5 and 6 times an hour. And then we have air curtains over all of the bay doors so that when they are open during the transfer of materials or when a truck enters the facility, the air curtain actually helps to eliminate any odors escaping that area.
Because it smells.
Because it could. I was in
You
there.
can't guarantee that it's not gonna smell.
I took a different farm family, not Jared's family, out last week. And I took them our organics receiving area. And we stood in there for, 20 or 30 minutes while we looked around. And the woman looked at me and said, there's some odor, but it's not that bad. And then we walked outside and she went, I don't smell it, I don't hear it. Now, you don't know me from a hole in a wall, you don't know whether I'm making the story up, but these are the reactions that we get. If you want somebody to come and, I'll take them out to the organic receiving area, they can walk around inside and outside, see what the odor is.
18 months ago, Tim and I did tour the one in Massachusetts, and I can attest to that as well. I was impressed with it. We don't live right next to this farm, but we live on the property, and just about as close as anyone. So my wife and I have had these conversations what this looks like, and, it's our property, it's our farm, and so, yeah, we were very cognizant of the smell, and felt like we did some research on it as well.
So, I know you guys have done obviously, there is a separate company that owns or that runs a anaerobic digester in the state. Is that going to be very reflective of the same operation? Only because I know Pennsylvania does have all
I
their.
cannot speak to anybody else's maintenance or upkeep of their own facilities. I can only speak to ours.
And the only reason I say that is I know there's just west of Lancaster in Rackville Township, they have one that's operating. And I suggest to the board to take a look at that and see that and get a feel for it.
Right,
I'm just curious,
but I can't.
in this opportunity.
Right, so
what's
we're running one of these facilities with, 10 employees to make sure that it is well maintained and that it is clean and that there is not trash blowing around and that we do not have odors that are impacting the neighbors and that we are taking good care of the equipment so that we do not have power outage, so that the system doesn't go down because somebody didn't clean through all the right pieces of equipment. Somebody else running a different operation, I can't attest to how they do it. It gives you an idea of what it could be, but it also could give you an idea of what we are working extremely hard to never be.
And I completely understand that, knowing that there is another one, just doing some research within a short drive for them to see, kind of suggestion there, to have that opportunity to let you know that there is.
I know there is another depackaging facility that's operating. I believe it is owned and operated by a farmer that owns that property as well. So it's not run independently of the farm. But of course, if the board wanted to go see it, that's outside of what I can comment on. I can just say that I can't comment on how anybody else operates their facilities.
So to the point of order for permitting through the state, I know with a poultry operation, you have to get a nutrient management plan, and the state reviews that by their standards and has odor, locations, all that governed through that permit. And municipalities basically look for that approval to say, okay, we do have the odor review and approved through the state. Is there, what we have on this operation that they do that for?
So currently, we have not been required, although we do have an updated nutrient management plan for you all, but I don't believe it includes an odor control plan. But, we have updated theirs in terms of their actual nutrient management flows and what they can accept. We will permit in accordance with, what is required. But as of now, that has not been required.
Are you buying the land?
No, it's a lease.
Lease. And that's how you're gonna help the farm go up, you're getting the lease. So you're not, are you selling the manure then?
No, I'm not selling manure.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we're not selling manure. We deliver it, they take ownership of it. We are not selling it. We do not get paid for the manure that we provide to
But
them.
your basic income is just gonna be
Leasing.
lease.
Right.
You get nothing from the gas or anything.
No, they own all the rights to the gas that's used.
Now, are
We
you
will-
not gonna fertilize your fields anymore because all your manure is gonna be going to the digester?
No, there's still nutrients in there.
Yeah.
There is still nutrients in there, and part of the plan is, our farm can't handle the nutrients that this system will produce. So when she talks about the nutrient management, or their nutrient management plan, or nutrient management system will actually extract a portion of the nutrients that is in that digestate, and then create a more concentrated version and a more dilute version, is kind of how we talk about the two different. And so,
So that's what
our
you'll
op-
spread?
Excuse me?
That's what you'll spread in the fields?
Yeah, we're looking at opportunities to spread both in different ways. The more concentrated stuff would be stuff that would, if we have neighbors that want to take some, it'd be easier to export that. You don't need to, it's in a more concentrated form. Whereas now you might put 6,000 to 8,000 gallons down, and with that you might put 1,000 to 2,000 gallons down per acre.
We all know every farm's gonna have their own manure to get rid of, so.
Not every farm, there's fewer and fewer dairy farms in our area. There's more and more land that's just being crop farmed. And, you look up in our valley right now, 15 years ago there was 5, and now there's 2. So, yes, but all of those, every place that the liquid digestate has to go, has to be a part of our nutrient management plan, which we have, had to do for years and will always continue to have to do. Yes, and it will.
I'm not trying to shoot you down, all I'm saying, like, I refer back to this picture again.
Right.
Within a 5-mile radius of his farm, we have how many developments? We have 3 schools. That concerns me with the odor. I don't see how you're not gonna stop the odor. I mean, like I said, to me, I'm not at a facility, I don't know what it smells like.
Right.
I mean, but I've been around cow manure my entire life as well.
Right.
To me, it just seems like this is gonna be more than that, because you have rotted food or whatever, outdated food is gonna be mixed with that.
So the food that comes in is typically not rotted.
So it's gonna be outdated, right?
Outdated, but not necessarily rotted. So what comes in might not be able to be sold, but we may or may not have had loads of ice cream that have come into the facility because, again, they don't have enough chocolate chips, they have too many chocolate chips, for any number of reasons that it can't be sold. They are still frozen, they are actually perfectly good. I will not say that we have had employees who've grabbed a entire carton of ice cream and taken it home with them, because it is actually 100% edible. It is just, it cannot be sold in accordance
Yeah,
with.
well, that's ice cream. Let's talk about rolled chicken. I mean,
Right.
chicken stinks. I mean, when it reaches its expiration date, we all know it stinks. So you're gonna be having stuff like that, and that's gonna be, I can't see how you're not gonna stop that odor.
Milk.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, we get all of this, and I stood in the facility in August, I stood in the facility a week ago. My kitchen trash can has absolutely smelled worse. That, yes, there is, if it was not being filtered, if the airflow was not being run continually, yes, absolutely, it has a much stronger potential to
Now,
smell.
what's the temperature of the facility, not 100 degrees or 80
No,
degrees, right?
no, I mean, we've got employees there, so we're keeping the temperature at a comfortable, I can't tell you what the thermostat's set at, but my
Probably
guess would be
68
somewhere
or
between
something.
68 and 72 degrees is probably about where that facility's running.
What if the folks up in Agawam, their township,
Yeah.
I'm sure that they could attest to the smell. It might not be a farm, but Agawam is much more populated, it's right outside of
Yes,
Springfield.
that facility
And
is
it's-
actually surrounded by residential, there's residences right across.
So maybe it'd be worthwhile to see if there could be a contact made there for them to find out, okay, we're in a very urban area, this food comes in here, because that's where the organics.
I'm not
That's
gonna lie to
the-
you, that's a big concern there. I mean, like I said, we got a landfill right next to us. We got one in Lanchester, we got
What?
one in Birdsboro. I mean.
Yeah, and that's, we're trying to reduce that and improve that, because right now, we're already taking all this food waste into our community. How can we better utilize that food waste? And so I think maybe reaching out to folks in Agawam would be, because they're right outside of Springfield, Massachusetts, much more populated than our area. And they're taking the stuff that smells. The stuff that goes on farms now, it's a direct interconnect, it just goes through a pipe, and then it goes into everything that's enclosed. That stuff you can't smell that stuff at all.
What do you mean they're taking the more
So the way that,
Smells.
the way,
The
so
stuff
the way
that
the facility
he's-
works is that
You just
the
talk
ag
about
raw
The
facility takes
actual
the package.
raw, not the liquid
And the
stuff.
slurry is, once it has gone through and it has been slurried up by the
I'm
packaging facility.
hearing his
it's taken out.
concerns talking about raw chicken, that's what I made that reference is.
No,
And
I
that, the
just-
organics recycling facility is in a more urban area than Morgantown.
This is a digester, a landfill is a landfill. I understand they're two separate entities. But I think some of our questions come from, so we have a landfill right here.
Mhm.
And it absolutely was not gonna stink, can't stink. There's too many
We have
precautions.
flares.
There's 6 layers of
Yeah,
liner
it's gonna-
system,
it's
it
gonna-
can't fail.
Right.
There's no possible, it's infallible. Yet you drive past there on any given day and you get that rotten egg smell, along with if it's actively working, which that's a landfill, but that rotten egg smell is methane gas. And some of that is due to leachate
Leachate, yeah.
breakouts,
Yep.
whatever you wanna call them.
Yep,
They can't control that, that happens.
right.
So what is the infallible conditions that happen with these facilities? Because I know there is some, I would just like to know what they are.
So some of it is when you design a landfill, and I come out of a background of environmental contamination, so I can speak a little bit about landfills, is that you actually are digging a giant hole in the ground and you are hoping you can control whatever is at the bottom and that it is not going to leach and it is not going to leak, and is that right? So our facility, the goal is to keep as much of it above grade as possible. The digesters might be sunk down about 10 feet because you guys have height restriction that we are mindful of, we don't want to exceed that. But things like that, otherwise the facility being above grade means that we see leaks. We will know if something has been released. All of our systems are piped and are monitored, the piping is monitored, the tanks are monitored. We know if something has a spill, has an air leak, has anything going on, so that we can check those things and go, the pressure's wrong, something's wrong. And we have staff that are entirely responsible for checking this and keeping tabs on it and monitoring it. We have somebody on call 24 hours a day. You know, this is the goal of the organics receiving building, is that the doors will stay closed unless there is somebody entering or leaving the building. We do not want to hang around with those doors hanging out open, because yes, when you have an open door, that's how the odor can get out even with an air curtain. The idea is that that building has a negative air pressure in it, so that odors are being sucked into the building and through the filtration system. And then the filtration system addresses those odors for any air that is discharged. But it actually keeps cycling it through the building so that it pulls it in, and that we don't create an environment where it can leak out, because if it's constantly breathing in, that it pulls most of that odor in. The remainder of the facilities are, the remainder of the containers that might be holding food waste in any capacity are the enclosed tanks, which are part of the monitoring system, the enclosed digesters, which are part of the monitoring system. The methane, we do not want a methane leak. We lose money when we have methane leaks. It's not good for business. It's not good for business to run the flare. The flare is for emergency purposes. The goal is to keep that methane in the system and running through until it is discharged into the pipeline. So, yes, I absolutely understand the concerns. And the first time I walked into the organics receiving facility, I was like, oh, it's gonna, wait, hang on. I mean, inside, you stand inside, sure, if you're standing next to a container or something, you might smell something. You stand there for 15, 20 minutes, you don't really notice anymore. You go outside, you don't notice it at all. But yes, I mean, if you want a family representative to come and walk around, I'm happy to show them to them. And you can have at least a person you trust
I
take
don't
a
know
look
how
at.
close my brother-in-law
Probably
is.
not, if he's in New
But
Hampshire, not that
Could
close.
you also give me the name of the townships at every one of your facilities that we could contact them and see if they had any complaints and smells?
Sure.
Actually, if I may,
Yeah.
the mayor of Agawam has toured the facility several times. He's more than happy to talk about it. I'm sorry, I'm Billy Guntner, I work with Vanguard Renewables.
Yes.
Just here, just to see how these meetings run, but I do know the mayor, he has spoken about it publicly, he's a big advocate for it. Partially because he's a big advocate for not sending food waste to landfills, because that is part of the reason why landfills smell so badly. And going to the raw chicken part, anything that's fresh like that is processed immediately. It's never held overnight. It's always processed, slurried, and goes into a sealed tank. So
You can tell me that, but I mean.
I know,
I'm saying
there's no
you
way
have-
for me to.
You have 19 to 21 trucks a day coming in there, Yeah,
If I could bottle it for you, I would, because it really doesn't smell, but I can understand your concern.
So also keep in mind, some of those loads that are coming in might be liquid only. So those,
That-
just for reference points, right, just,
But I mean, even grease out of grease traps, that stinks.
and that goes into an enclosed tank. So,
Now,
I
do you
mean-
currently have a plan in place with the gas company to tie into a pipeline?
We
or-
are talking to a couple of different options, that depending on which option ends up being more viable. Because, in case you weren't aware, land in Pennsylvania is kind of expensive. And so to put a pipeline in the ground may be cost prohibitive, in which case that's why we're looking at backup for the trucks. But we have a couple of different options. We have 3 to 4 different options in place right now, so that we will have an optic for this when it is available, when it's ready.
Now, what are the chances of explosions there with storing that?
We have been operating these digesters for 10 years. We have never had anything that resembles an explosion issue. We operate lower explosive limit meters on the property to make sure that if anything were to release, those meters will go off before we hit a point of explosion.
Now, in the farms that you showed us,
Yeah.
what is the general acreage that your company consumes on each one of these?
So some of those farms are smaller because we only have a single digester and that they are taking in a lower volume of material. So I believe that Salisbury is the largest one and does not include that organics receiving area. And that property is about 8 acres? 8 acres, I believe. So that one that's got the biggest footprint and is still missing that organics receiving area building.
That's only 7, 8 acres.
Plus the organic receiving building, so we get up to 10 because you need the building, the parking area in order to.
And they're milking 900 cows.
They are,
And you're taking 10 acres, which is more, and he only has 350 cows.
correct.
Why the bigger facility here for the less amount of cows?
Because we're able to operate a more efficient facility with more food waste.
So you're gonna have more food then.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to question,
Yeah.
that little bit of liquid you smelled earlier,
Yeah,
is that your fertilizer then?
that's the equivalent. So that one has not gone through the same level of nutrient management that the Kurtland Farms would need, but it's the same idea. That was managed to the farm that is located on that property.
So that's just bedding there, but the other is the fertilizer.
It's the fertilizer.
And
Now
so
that bedding material can be used as a soil amendment, but in this case, Jared would prefer to use it as bedding. It can be used as both.
Okay. And that fertilizer, like, would it be concentrated where it smells as bad as like liquid pig manure or something like that? Never.
No, because a lot of the odor comes from, thank you, a lot of the odor comes from, yeah, a lot of the odor, I don't want you to squeeze that all over yourself. You have to get creative with your packaging. So. Please don't drink it. You don't need all those nutrients. So the way it works is that the methane, removal of the methane makes a big difference in the smell. Is that if you don't have methane being generated, you don't have that same level of smell. Thank you.
So, then, if you use that for the bedding, there's no chemicals used in this process, right? Strictly
No,
under
if we
its
put
own
chemicals-
digestion.
If we put chemicals in, we'll kill the microbes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, for instance, with chicken breasts, with any raw food, even vegetables, gain bacteria. So when you're gaining that bacteria through your digestive system, which is part of the enzymes in the digestion, it's going to get into that bedding material, and then your cows are gonna lay on that, possibly eat from that. What does that do to the cows?
We are in bed with raw manure solids. We have been for 10 years. So, I mean, versus sand, yeah, there's greater opportunity for infection in our cows, mastitis and stuff like that, but it's something that we've been doing for 10 years already and manage it on the farm. So, if we don't have raw vegetables, well, I mean, cow feed is raw with spoilage and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, we actually, the comfort on deep bedding with roll manure solids, I mean, we feel like if our cows' overall health, I mean, is the best out there that we can get. So we don't have to import a bunch of sand and run through a sand separation system. Don't have to worry about that by using the roll manure solids. So. And every farm that one of their digesters is on is currently bedding with the raw digestate solids. So we call them raw manure solids because that's what it is. This would be raw digestate solids.
I just asked that question because if you remember, about 10 years ago, we came up with the great idea of feeding our farm animals, cows, pigs, chickens, etc., byproduct food, outdated food, and that started creating the rumble effect of a lot of sick animals in a lot of different ways. So I was wondering how this process differs. It's still the same material.
Right, so when it runs through the digester, it is kept at a temperature that optimizes the breakdown of raw materials. It also will kill some of the pathogens that are in there. So a lot of that bacteria cannot survive in that digester, especially during that period of time.
So if you can't get a pipeline in, if it's not economical, you'll be storing methane on site and either compressing it or
If you
producing
stored it in a either
liquefied.
compressed or liquefied natural gas.
And those are much different hazards
tanker.
from a pipeline.
No, there's not much of a hazard, so that it's not there very long. We remove it about once a day or once every other day. So you're not backing these things up and storing many days worth of material out there. So the tankers will fill slowly over time, and when they reach capacity or near, they will be traded out for an empty tanker. So we're not storing material on that property in those tankers. We're filling them and then removing them.
Okay, does anyone else have questions?
Yes, I have a
Wait, on his question real quick. So when it's stored, doesn't methane become a hazmat? Hazardous material?
It is not, it's being stored safely. No, it's not considered hazardous material.
No, like, isn't it considered just, like,
It has to be managed appropriately.
right,
So
it's
it
a
is.
hazmat?
It has to be labeled in terms of hazard, in terms of moving it along the roadways, yes.
Right.
Um,
So then, but while it's being stored at that facility, it's still the same content of the materials that would be out on the road, so it's still a hazmat?
Well, it's being stored in a tank, so it's less likely to get into an accident, right? You put a tanker truck out on a highway, and it
Right.
becomes a higher risk point because you are moving it among traffic.
Right, but if you have a problem on the property.
Right, but having it stationary on a property, it is not likely to be run into by another vehicle and cause a safety issue.
Right.
And the tankers are designed to hold this material. So we do not hold them at capacity while they are filling. They are less likely to come in to become a risk point. And when they are full, they are removed.
So it's less likely.
Less likely to have a risk, yes.
And did you,
Go ahead.
on the plans that you sent, did you also put in the pipeline that you're proposing possibly?
We have not designed the pipeline yet, so I don't have a location for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I know why you're asking. The goal would be, the goal would be to come down the driveway and along the roadway and not go through your property. Because I know we've got Sunoco there as well, and we can't cross paths with them.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I was like another pipeline going near my property. That's
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
know,
wondering.
I know.
Going back to the odor control in the organic receiving area, did you mention how many times does the air get infiltrated through the system and gets purified through the odor control system?
So it's between
Per
12
hour?
6 times an hour.
12 to 6 times, how
I
many?
thought it was six times an hour
Okay.
is what is being purified through that system.
So the whole air inside the whole building gets
Is
purified
transitioned 6
6
times.
times an hour?
Yep.
Okay. So that controls the whole odor inside the building?
And it keeps the negative air pressure coming in, so as you're constantly pulling air through our internal system, you're pulling in air from the outside, and the air curtains on top of that help to prevent that.
You mentioned it's currently activated carbon, is that the case?
It's currently
Is
a
that what
carbon
you would use?
filtration medium, yeah. But we're looking at, are there other options that might work better? Currently carbon is the winner, but that doesn't mean that we won't find something that works even better, and can run the system and be better.
And that'll be in your air permit application to Pennsylvania DEP?
Nothing going through that system is considered hazardous, so there's nothing being discharged from that is not breathable indoor air. So we've discussed it with them, and they didn't find any concerns on that.
Thank you.
So I know we had hoped to have a quick,
In the back.
sorry, yeah,
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I have a few questions.
Sure.
At the last meeting, you mentioned that the facility would run 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., but that's
Permitted.
not what you
Permitted.
said.
it's permitted for 5 AM to 10 PM on the off chance that we have any reasons that we need to come in early and run late. Yep.
I said, next question, what about noise at night? What does the facility produce in terms of noise and lighting?
So lighting will be for safety purposes, we have not come up with a final lighting plan. However, we will be respectful of the fact that there are neighbors in the area, and that their windows might be impacted by them. We've talked, that we are aware of this. We do need to have them for safety concerns, though. We don't want anybody on that property messing with equipment. So the goal of lighting is to light places where we believe there could be, if there was ever anybody on the property, it would be a risk. But to not light it so that it looks like a commercial real estate property because it is not a shopping plaza.
Well, we already have the pollution, which I'm happy to accept, of our beautiful high school. Then we have the pollution of the facilities that have grown commercially, and now we're adding you. We're at the top of the hill. We observe all of it. So, yes, I'm conscious of that.
Yep.
I'm also very concerned about the traffic, 19 to 21. I witness it every day. I'm retired now. I'm at home. I witness the traffic. 19 to 21 18-wheelers, is that what?
Not necessarily. So there's some of them might be. We may
Yes.
end up with trailer trucks that come in with trailer loads. We may end up with tanker trucks that have liquid loads. We may end up with smaller trucks that come in, smaller box trucks that are bringing in smaller delivery loads.
And what about egress, when all of these containers that are holding all of these food waste, what's happening to those containers? I must have missed it. You're bringing in all this food.
In packaging, correct. The packaging is put into dumpsters and the dumpsters are taken out.
So 19 to 21 trucks of waste.
No, inclusive of all trucks coming onto the property. So it includes any trucks containing waste. It includes
Yes.
the truck. If we need to offtake gas via a truck system, it includes that number in there. It includes the removal of any wastes that maybe need to be taken off the property. That is our total truck volume daily.
Okay, and each dumpster is going to be emptied daily?
They will be stored within the facility. If they are taken outside of the facility, because they are now full, then they
Yes.
will be taken off-site that day, yes. If they are being stored within the facility because they are not full yet, they will stay in the confines of the locked building.
And those containers are not washed? They're simply dumped and put into the dumpster?
No, we don't wash. You mean the empty food packaging?
Yes.
No, we don't wash it.
And the
That was it for me.
empty food packaging gets compacted, right? Or-
It does. The materials, so things that can be, as they go through and they get squished and the material comes out, sort of like the ketchup packet, you stomp on it, it is now flatter than it was. So we're able to fit more material into those dumpsters
Sure.
than you would if it was full containers of ice cream.
Sure.
Right, so we are able to be more efficient with that use of off-site, of moving those materials around.
And how long is your lease?
Our lease is for 20 years with the option of, if Jared is still happy with us at the end of that time period, it could be extended.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. In a little bit of reading I've done, it seemed to indicate that a milking cows of about 500 quantity at a farm is sort of the threshold of where it's reasonable or practical to install a digester. With this one being substantially less than 500 cows, my assumption is that you're doing it primarily then depending on food waste coming in as a higher percentage than maybe some.
Well, I mean, it could be, yes, we could have a higher percentage of food waste than some, however, those aren't operated by us. The goal is that it's about 20, that actually 300 cows ends up being pretty good according to our research and our experience. It's an operating facility with that volume of manure is purely efficient. And the food waste just gives them more to eat and makes them more effective.
In your chart that you showed,
Yep.
I think the largest digester was 60,000 tons a year capacity, which in my calculations translates to about 10 trucks a day. You're talking in the range of 20 trucks a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming what's the anticipated tonnage per day or per year that you anticipate there? I think it's 60,000, 65,000 annual food waste. What's the annual food waste expectation for this one?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can find it out. I just don't, I don't remember.
It seems to me it's like maybe twice the size of your largest one that you've listed.
It may be, and I'm sorry, I just don't have the number off the top of my head. I can't make up a number for you.
I mean, you know, based on tonnage and truckloads and all that, my calculation was about 10 trucks a day for that one. So I'm assuming it's substantially larger. Is that the largest one you've done so far?
That is the largest one in operation right now. Now, that is accepting food waste. We do also operate large manure-only digesters.
So in your plans, as you think about this would be your largest facility?
No, we've got a facility in line ahead of this one for construction in a different state.
If the methane is not removed by pipeline, how many trucks a day, or how do you quantify
It's about a truck a day or a truck every other day.
leaving?
Yep.
And is that a liquefied
It
methane?
either would be liquefied or
Cryogenic or-
compressed.
Okay. So is that a refrigerated liquid then at that point? Leaving?
We have not picked the trucks that we're going to use yet. So it'll either go into a compressed or a liquid stage, in which case there is some temperature change that needs to occur at both ends, both when we put it into the tanker and both when it comes out and goes to the pipeline.
I have an MSDS on refrigerated liquid methane, and it indicates that it's highly explosive and it's quite dangerous on the road. And that's just something that just is. I mean, it's just, if that's what you're going to be sending out. I had other questions about the hours and all that. You said you will have 10 employees on site
Correct.
at all times.
No, not at all time. We will employ 10 people throughout that property. So if we're operating 6 days a week, they might now be 10 people on site all day, every day.
Okay. Is the food, you don't control where the food waste comes from, right? You're
We
not
do to a certain extent because we maintain the contracts. So if we have a food partner that we do not feel is responsible in what they are providing to us, we can end that contract with them. And along those lines, we also try to schedule to a certain extent when those trucks are going to come through, so that we do not end up with the entire day's loads of trucks shows up at 12 before 9 a.m. The roads can't handle it, our facility can't handle it, it's not good for anybody. So we do try to stagger those delivery times throughout the day.
And you anticipate that the road system here is adequate to handle all of that truck traffic?
I mean, this is the bad side of Kurtland Farm being located on two sides of a major road, is that Jared can speak to the amount of traffic that is already present. I don't know that 20 trucks is going to add significantly that load on that major roadway.
And that's, when you say 19 to 21, that's like max capacity, like?
That's our average.
In 10 years, we
have no plans to upgrade the amount of, no, because the facility is being designed to work at its optimum levels. And we can't stuff more food waste in there than the facility can hold.
That's all I have.
All right, anyone else? Yes.
Can I ask the zoning, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, the zoning, about zoning. I mean, like going out on 23 with an 18-wheeler and you're making a left-hand turn, you're going up that hill, trying to get the speed up, is that feasible? I mean, and also, what's the thing gonna be for across with the firehouse trying to get out?
So I think your point about the firehouse is a good point to the end of, until a plan is submitted and we can really review on what the options are and what's best for zoning. Not sure what that best location is until that comes in front of the township for an actual review. But as far as the truck up the hill, I think those are concerns the township can raise, but it's gonna be really something the township raises with PennDOT, because it's a PennDOT road. So it's a state regulated road out there, so.
But who's determining where the driveway goes then?
So the driveway, again, it falls under the township ordinances on where it's best located, and that will come into play.
Right.
Again, there's a lot of factors, but PennDOT also has a say on where that location will be. It's gonna be kind of, they're getting feedback from PennDOT now in a submission, so they'll have comments, but hopefully they're not in contradiction to what the township review will be. So there will be feedback from both sides.
Okay.
And I think things like the hill are a very good point points to,
Because
Yeah.
those get that run up that hill right by my house. If they don't get a good start down at 401, then traffic backs up all the way down, and if a fire truck's trying to get out,
So PennDOT's gonna have the final say.
but to the point of where that is and per the ordinance,
What about a traffic light, Scott?
it's kind of an there's gonna be comments from both sides, really. They'll regulate the actual driveway, what type of driveway they
Right,
have.
I mean, nothing's gonna move
And
without
some of the
PennDOT saying
locations-
okay.
Yeah, agreed.
But for the record, there's no official plans have been submitted to the township. This is an informational.
Right, this
Q&A
is, this
kind
is
of thing.
informational only, this is, we wanted to, because we do, and, you know, this is, Dwight, my attorney, is here for the zoning side of things, because we do know that we don't fit into your current zoning ordinances. And so this was informational for the boards to be able to, when we start talking in words, you all at least have a general concept of what it is that we're talking about. You know, I do this as my biology lesson for the evening. I'm sorry, you won't look like you're back in school. But it hopefully will give you an understanding of what it is that we're proposing and what we're talking about. So that we can continue conversations, we can figure out how we might be able to fit into, you know, the town and be able to work with you all in a way that benefits the farm and isn't a detriment. You know, there's definitely benefits to the farm, there are benefits to the community. We are gonna bring in jobs, not only, you know, on the site, but during construction. You know, there is construction that's going to happen. Yes, we will oversee the construction, but we don't fly big construction crews all over the country to build these, it's not practical. You know, folks in the area are, you know, would be available to help with construction if we can find the appropriate teams and that kind of stuff. You know, we want to be good neighbors. We don't want to, you know, we don't want to be a bad neighbor. I know you've had bad experiences with construction projects in your area. I don't want to be that story later. You know, we joked at the neighbor meeting that, like, you know, everybody said, well, what about, I've seen people do this badly, I've seen people do that badly. Well, I've, you know, dated guys in the past that were not necessarily the most wonderful people, but eventually you find one that sticks. We would like to be the partner that sticks. You know, it is different, it is unusual, it is, you know, this is not, it is exceptionally common in Europe. They are not in this design common yet in the US. However, we are going to continue to make food waste. We are going to continue to put a lot of pressure on small farms to operate with small margins, with, you know, with land being at a premium and being able to sell out for those that can is a better market. But at some point, we still need food. So we still need to be able to keep farms in operation. And if this is a way that we can make it work and, you know, make it work in a big picture, then that's something we want to get involved in. We want to help with that.
How many years has your farm been in agricultural preservation?
it's 99, 2000.
24 years.
So let's ask that question now that you brought that up with the zoning. It's in ag preservation. So first part of the question, how does that even work if you put a commercial / industrial style business on the property? And question number two, I mean, what does that do to ag preservation
So
overall? You know, because then it will become, ag preservation then will become aftermath. So, you know, everything's always aftermath. What happens then? So first is.
Let me respond to that, and that is a good question. There's really two issues, and good evening, my name is Dwight Yoder. Thank you for working with us to set this up. We really appreciate the opportunity to present. You did a great job. So there's two issues. The Ag Preserve Board enforces agricultural easements. Those are private agreements that are placed on farms, easements that are enforceable by the Ag Preserve Board. And the Ag Preserve Board is in charge of determining what uses are allowed under those easements. And they've gone, Vanguard Renewables has gone to the Berks County Ag Preserve Board and said, this is what we're proposing, and Sarah can speak to this, but my understanding is their response was, we believe this is consistent with the easement because it allows farmers to continue to farm. And some of that's an economic reality of farmers. I mean, it's just, you know, farmers need to find creative ways to bring in enough money to keep their farm afloat. it's just a reality. You see the consolidation of large farms, and that, the small farmers can hardly make it anymore. So it was a little surprising to me, was because when Sarah contacted me, I said, if it's a preserved farm, you gotta deal with them first, we don't even need to look at the zoning, because I can't help you with an ag preserved farm, that's up to the ag preserve board. And somewhat to my surprise, the preserve board came back and said, we support this. And I think their view is a long-term view, which is, on the one hand, you could look at this and say, well, this seemed kind of like a commercial industrial use of property, right? And why would the ag preserve board allow that? But when you step back and you look at, it's taking, manure from the farm, from the dairy cows, it's processing that, it's giving something back to the farmers. It's not, in the scheme of things, it's not taking a ton of land up. It's usually more in the farmstead area of farms. There might be some cropland that's being used, but it's not like you're taking a big chunk of, but I think most importantly, they see this as a way to allow farmers to continue to farm. And, ultimately, those easements allow for rural occupations, and I think that's kind of how they fit this in. But I think that we're looking at the big picture. So, yeah.
The feedback that I got back from the board was that originally the board was set up to protect farmland and to maintain farmland, it's either being turned into commercial, residential, whatever. Now, their goal is to preserve farmers and allowing them the opportunity to have economic diversity on the farms allows them to continue to operate.
Well, agricultural preservation was set up for numerous reasons. It was set up not only to preserve the farmland, but it was to give you guys tax breaks, to help you guys out, to deter builders from coming in and purchasing that property and developing it. What you're saying is that you're absolutely right. You're making it more commercial and industrial now, and now we have an out-of-state company coming in here and benefiting from it. Us as the planning commission and the board, it's our job to sit there and figure out what our township does. Now, right now, we have pretty much the southern, southeastern, southwestern tips of our community for an agricultural preservation. Now, we know when we get scrutiny from, say, like the casino, we know that the southern parts of our township are in agricultural preservation. Now you want to bring in a commercial area into an ag-pres area, so that is a concern of mine as well. And I know we've all talked about that. That definitely, if anybody else were to try to develop an agricultural preservation area, they would be penalized. They'd have to pay back taxes. There'd be fines involved in that. Is that anything you guys, because they agree with this, that there's no penalty?
The biggest thing was the tax break.
Yeah,
I hope Kurt is gonna have to go back and pay the 20 years.
Yeah, well, again, I think, there's.
You're talking about Act 319.
That's. Yeah, so there's, again, when you put your farm into an ag preservation easement, you get tax breaks for that. That's basically, they're buying your development rights and you're getting a certain amount of money for agreeing to the easement. That's different than what we call the Clean and Green program, which is a program that you don't have to have a preserved farm. You need to meet certain minimum requirements, usually it's 10 acres or a certain amount of money that's being produced from ag products. And then you can qualify for the Clean and Green program. And that basically reduces the amount that your property is assessed so that you pay less in property taxes. If you pull it out of Clean and Green, then you have to pay what are called rollback taxes. So you look back 7 years and you pay the taxes that you didn't pay, basically. We haven't looked at this, whether rollback taxes would apply here. If they would, then they would have to pay the rollback taxes. The assessment office would require that those taxes that were not paid would be paid on this if they determine that this is not one of the uses that fall under that program. I will say that anaerobic digesters are common on farms. Maybe not so much in this immediate area, but
Show me one in Pennsylvania.
Lancaster County, the zoning work that I just looked at like 7 different municipalities that have anaerobic digesters as permitted uses
One in
in that
Pennsylvania.
district. What's that?
There's one of these in Pennsylvania.
It's 7 in Lancaster.
No, I looked at, yeah, but there's, I'm aware of one in Raffo, I'm in East Drumore Township.
Just heard of tonight.
Yeah, there's numerous ones. Now, again, I don't know how they compare exactly with Vanguard Renewables, But I guess my point is that these anaerobic digesters are a known quantity, and they are recognized in zoning ordinances. Your township doesn't recognize them, and that's part of why we're having this discussion, to see if there's an openness to consider whether this is something that you would want to, with the appropriate rules and controls and conditions, consider having in the township. And I think that's ultimately, as elected officials, that's gonna be in your laps to figure that out. But I guess what I would say is, this fits into, I think, the future of farming. And I think you can get ahead of the curve and be sure that it's done the correct way, or you'll be behind the curve. And I think this is an opportunity to partner with a local farmer and a tried and true business that knows what they're doing. My concern from a zoning and land use standpoint is you have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And that's where you run into a lot of the concerns that I think have been raised tonight, where you just don't have anybody that's done this. So ultimately, I think it comes down to, A, if this is something you're willing to consider, no guarantees. We just like to get some feedback before we start the process of requesting any kind of zoning change. If you say, no way, we would rather know that now than 6 months from now, right? If you say, listen, we have some concerns, but we're willing to consider this, keep working and we'll see where it goes, that's great, we'll start doing that. And I think that's kind of what we're hoping to figure out tonight. And I've been taking notes about all the concerns. I'm glad the neighbors are here. The last thing you want to do is come in and start something that upsets the township and the neighbors. So I think Vanguard Renewables has been very intentional about wanting to reach out, be sure there's no surprises, not try and just submit a zoning application for a bunch of variances and then all of a sudden everybody's like, what's going on here? So when we looked at this, I said, I don't think it really fits in anywhere. I mean, you know, zoning attorneys can always kind of come up with different angles on, is this a farm-related business or occupation, but it just felt like it was something that should be addressed up front so that this board here, the planning commission, can give us feedback on whether this is something that could work in the township. And if so, we'll work with township staff, we'll work with the planning commission, we'll work with supervisors to start pulling together some of these things to be sure that if it goes in, that it's done the right way. And it's not just something that's gonna be there and all of a sudden have all kinds of problems. So,
Well, we do have concerns. I mean, I think a lot of it is fear of not knowing. I mean, we don't know a lot about this. You know, we've done our due diligence and we're doing our research as well. I think it's great that you're helping out a local farm. I mean, I'm not against that at all, just that I think there's a lot of stuff that we need to look into, and we all need to kind of sit back and take in.
And actually, sorry, if I can just, along Dwight's lines, we did not mean to drop this on you so far along in the process. That is an apology.
And that was kind of like one of the things that we brought up to our attorney,
So,
like why, you know,
So,
we got
there's a
nothing,
story.
the Rich family, we got nothing, we're hearing
There's a
about
story.
AEP permits and all that, and we're like, whoa,
So,
wait a minute.
our apologies on that. The farms that we are built on in Massachusetts and Vermont are all farm preservation farms, but in Massachusetts and Vermont, this all fit into everybody's zoning. And so they looked at it and went, yep, you're agricultural, go. And as we learned, as we have worked our way across the country, this is not true everywhere. So our history had told us that agricultural preservation, digesters fit right in there. We have learned that this is not actually the case everywhere in the country. Now, not Pennsylvania, we have filed for text amendments for anaerobic digesters in other states and have had approval, which is not here and not you, but I'm just saying that we are learning from our mistakes, and we do realize that this is something that in an ideal world we would have come before you a year ago and we would have had this conversation before we got this far into it. So my apologies, I was not here a year ago, but I will fall on the sword for that one, that it was our past experience had not led us to believe that it was going to be vastly different in other parts of the country. And we learned, and now it's one of the first things we look at.
Well, you guys know Andy Stolzfus. Andy's my neighbor. He's in agricultural preservation. He sold out to Glenn and Raymond Brubacher. He tried to put up just a house in an area that he don't even farm, just on the hill. And agricultural preservation gave him a very hard time and almost couldn't do it. Now, he pulled some tape and went through some red strings and all that, but he finally got it. That's what I thought agricultural preservation was about, preserving everything. So I'm with you on that. I don't know how they can do that.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the traffic also, and we gotta make sure we have that, and also the smell. I don't want the neighbors complaining about the smell.
I will say that we've done some reading prior to this meeting, and I don't have a number, but there's a lot of them in Pennsylvania. Oregon Dairy has one, and there's a whole bunch in Lancaster County, and it's something that has been favorably looked upon by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. You know, folks who are concerned about that as well. So it's not, while there might be concerns, there are a bunch, not to this scale, but you know, small farms doing things.
And there is on the EPA website, Environmental Protection Agency, it sorts down all of the digesters all around the US, with each state, with what type it is, and all of that stuff. So maybe.
In fact, I was on that site. There's many pages of digesters in Pennsylvania.
Now, are these companies, these digesters they're talking about, they your competitor? I mean,
Some of them might be privately owned, some of them are smaller, some of them could be competitors. We may not be alone, but we are one of the few that do maintain owners and operation of these. A lot of them come in and they go, Jared, I'm gonna build you a digester, it's gonna be awesome. And then they go, here you go, and they walk out. And then, so Jared is the one that gets the phone call if something goes wrong in the middle of the night. Jared's gotta learn how to manage a digester on top of managing a dairy farm. Jared and Tim are good at cows. I think they're adorable. I like to take pictures of them and send them to my child. I would not know how to take care of a cow without much research and training. We have folks who we train, and our employees run these facilities. We make sure that they are the ones that are doing the work, that they understand why these digesters, they get upset tummies. Like, we've had digesters that were lactose intolerant for a little while. They did not like ice cream, they did not like milk. We changed what their food intake was so that they will operate correctly. We have, excuse me, we have operators who manage it like a video game. They'll be on their phone and you're like, what are you doing? Because if I turn it up a half a degree, I get a little bit more methane. If I change this little setting, I get a little bit more. If I turn it down a little bit, then they get a little bit quieter. But we have people who, this is their idea of a great day, is to go and to play with all of this stuff.
Are they licensed or registered like they are like a sewer plant operator by the states?
That is an excellent question. Not to my knowledge, but I'm gonna look into it and actually get you a better answer than that, because it hasn't come up before. I've been asked.
If you built that for him and then just left it to him to run, you wouldn't make any money out of it. He'd make everything. He'd make the money on the methane.
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
There's farms across Pennsylvania. There's one out in Juniata County that has one. I've heard a couple different ways. When they had a conversation with them, they tried to give them their digester. Said, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's what we actually.
You just have to understand where it comes from. We gotta dot all our i's, cross all our t's. We have 4,120 residents here. So, you know, if we say yes to this without doing our research, and it goes south, we're the ones that gotta take it.
I understand, and I will say it's very interesting for me to, hear the conversations about traffic and stuff like that, because I would argue that probably few people that have been as impacted by the traffic that has increased over the last 25 years is our family. And 3 years ago, I was in a major accident by someone who rear-ended me and, went into the emergency room, so I'm very aware. And I approached PennDOT about trying to get the speed limit dropped, and I called the township about trying to get the speed limit dropped from Elverson to Morgantown to 35 miles an hour, and I, got nowhere, nothing, and we're acutely aware of what's happening in this township.
Yeah, you're located on both sides of the road.
And so, my house is 10 feet from Route 23. I have 5 kids under the age of 10. We know what's going on.
And we already know that 401 is already a bad area.
And
we talked about the school, about putting red light there.
Yeah, we eat breakfast every morning with our entire community as the kids go to school. The traffic light is back up to 401. So for me, it's like, to hear the concerns about traffic, to me it almost feels like that ship sailed a long time ago, and we've took the brunt of that, and we weren't considered in any of that. And so I understand, that's from my perspective, and I'm thinking about my family now and then what's coming over the next couple of years. And we own this farm, and I've owned it for 100 years, and I want to pay it. My kids are already talking about what they're going to do. So what are we doing that? And there's tension in that, and I understand we aren't the only family that lives in this community, but you know, I don't wanna go anywhere. My kids don't wanna go anywhere, and it's how do we work together? And I think he made a point, is okay, we brought this, and we are probably a little late in the process, but how can we have the conversation about moving this forward? The digesters are throughout the country. You read in any dairy publication, at least one article, every publication has something about a digester. And most of them are 5,000 to 10,000 cow dairies. We're not gonna put in a 5,000 cow dairy in our community. But how can we reap the benefits of that technology? Because in Europe, it's happening, and everything happens in Europe comes over here in 10 years. And it's coming, and how 10, 20, you know, how can we take advantage of that, just like we did with robotic technology 10 years ago, we built that farm. How can we take advantage of that too? So the same conversation that you guys are now being faced with, my wife and I and our family faced 2 years ago, and as we started this process.
Well, it's like Sarah said, she apologized. I mean, to me, it seemed like we were getting backdoored because we were hearing from everybody but you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and
you've
for us,
been a member of this community for how long? You could have came to a township meeting and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this.
well, and I think for learning process, so.
Well, and also, I think we take responsibility more than Jared, is that, while we're having
I
conversations
do,
with
but we're a
him.
community here, so.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but he does not wanna put us in a position where he has put forward something that we've been working on the technology, we've been changing things. So I've showed you this changes since our existing facilities versus what we have planned now. If Jared had come to you 2 years ago and given you like, this is what we're looking at, the number of changes that have occurred since then, I'm not presenting it, the idea is the same, but the way we've gone about it has changed significantly. And, you know, this was our responsibility to come forward. He is the community member, but we are gonna build it, we're gonna own it, we're gonna operate it. That's on us, is that we absolutely should have been in front of you much
So we
sooner.
wouldn't be doing our job, we wouldn't be asking all these questions.
No, I have no problem with the questions. My husband will tell you, I never stop talking, so like, feel free to ask me questions.
And I think about this in a way that, much like he said, we have 4,100 plus residents. If we don't do our due diligence and we make a bad decision here, we're not gonna pay the consequences alone. All 4,100 of our residents are gonna suffer those consequences. So, you know, this board right here has to make a conscious decision on what's best for 4,100 people. That's not an easy job to do. So we're gonna ask a lot of questions.
No, that's fine. We can do this again if you'd like. Yes.
One more question. When you're talking about land values and the residents, is there any way to find out how it affects the property value in the town? Like,
That's a good question.
I don't even
because,
think we have anything to compare it to even answer that.
I mean, to say there's commercial property going, you know, in your neighborhood, you know, commercial trash property that's going in your neighborhood.
This is a fair, unfair assessment, but I think it would be considered like a sewer treatment plant, probably, because it's very similar in its process, right?
I think it would maybe be more like intensive ag, which would be permitted, I mean, more of a concentrated operation that, you know, so.
So once again, no, we have no way of determining what's gonna do your property
But
value.
if you find out, because people were asking, my neighbors and stuff.
Well, I think, can you give us a list of where your facilities are at, what townships
Yeah,
they're in,
good
per capita, just so we can maybe.
Well, I mean, I can
Like
give
a
you.
list that we can contact the local townships and talk to them, find out how many residents they have, and, you know,
Yep.
and, you know, if there are in comparison to what we are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be, I mean, you're saying that there's other digesters, but they're not yours, so that really wouldn't do us any justice, because they're gonna be different.
They're gonna be different. I mean, you could see what they've done in the townships that they're in, because that will give you Pennsylvania numbers versus Massachusetts numbers versus Vermont numbers versus, you know, it is all different. But, and is the perception of it, the property value at the perception point going to be different than once it's in operation, and maybe you realize that actually it does, it runs like an agricultural property. Sure, we've got some trucks coming in and out, but, you know, tractors and farms and manure and, you know, deliveries of fertilizer, we're hoping to reduce some of that, you know, things like that, that, yes, it's a hard comparison point. I don't wanna call it a wastewater treatment plant because, right, no, I understand that you're not making the comparison. But, you know, sewage is absolutely the thing we don't take,
Right.
except for cow, we'll take all the cow poop, but everybody else stays out of the system. So, you know, there is a difference, and it's a closed system, and right, but it's a hard comparison
But
to
in
make.
its own right, I would think they would be very similar.
So actually, some wastewater treatment plants run digesters as a separate operation next to them to help break down some of those materials. So like they might run in parallel, but they do operate in a different capacity.
Just the one thing, offsets. In the last 2 years, we've gone to dragline injection. We took off, probably transported on the road over 2 million gallons of manure going on 23 or close, maybe not all of them on 23, but at least half of it. That is a huge traffic problem when we have tank spreaders having to go up the road and back and forth. That already is probably gonna more than offset the number of trucks coming in, I would say. Now, of course, that's all at one time, in a short period of time. The other thing is, that odor you're talking about, I think would obviously more than offset because the digestate has so much less. Even when we do dragline inject, we still have some residual odor. This would practically eliminate that odor as well.
Well, now you're still gonna have to drain your lagoons, correct?
And we will, yeah, well,
So,
that'll
I mean,
be done in a way
your
that's.
traffic's still gonna be out there in the road with your tractors.
No, we put it under the road. We put hoses under the road.
It can run up to a mile.
We put 1 million gallons on south of 23 from that lagoon that you never see. We've done that
But
2
I'm saying
years.
the lagoons from the digester though.
That's the same
stuff
thing.
you're
That's
gonna-
the same stuff.
You're gonna spread that on your fields though.
Injected. Yes.
It's gonna be injected by drag line.
So I'm just saying, we're doing things already that to stay ahead of the curve, and I think what we've already done will probably more than mitigate the traffic coming in. Now, there will be more tanker trucks going to other farms. We will have to export some. But, and we could actually probably do an analysis of all of that and give you some real hard data to say, okay, how many truckloads of actual manure or digestate would be leaving the farm, and how will that offset, just so you know the traffic part. Because it's not just what's coming in and what they're using, it's what has to go out to the fields wherever it could go, and we're
Well,
working on that.
that'll be done later during traffic study time.
So,
I mean,
I'm just saying, those are things we can bring to the table, and I think would be very helpful for you guys.
That's what, this is informational, this
So-
is Q&A, so I mean, hey, we're trying to get as much information as we can, so we
Exactly.
can talk about
So
this.
just make a note of that we want to give you a fuller picture of what traffic impacts are.
I mean, I can pretty much speak for all of us that we're staying open-minded, but we have a lot of what-ifs, we have a lot of questions.
Absolutely.
So like, the odor thing, I mean, I don't know, that,
I know, it's hard to quantify,
I mean, come on, we went to Twin Valley, I mean, we didn't have air conditioning when we went to Twin Valley, they had the
Yeah,
windows
we-
open. When you guys spread stuff on the fields, it
I'm
was bad.
sorry.
You know what I mean, it was bad.
Well, we're
done with that. I mean, more or less, that's what we're really trying to do.
Yeah, but it's not just you, I mean, the other.
Well, I know.
You know what I mean? I
Oh, you
mean,
sit up in the football stadium and smell the manure, well, yeah.
You know,
It's
but
just
you know, when we
Friday
grew up
night
here, we can
odors.
smell that, I'm just afraid like, all I can picture is rotten food, that's
Right.
what I picture.
No, I
You know,
understand.
and to me, I know what rotten food smells like, we had a restaurant, and I know what that smelled like, I know what our dumpster smelled like.
If I can come over you for a second, one of these handouts. We're showing you pictures of farms, let's go. So cows, digester. So this is another picture of the inside of the organic receiving area. Right, that shows the equipment on the bottom. I thought we had another one that showed some of the storage stuff. But basically, we're not storing rotten food. We're storing inedible food, which may not be rotten. Right, you look in your fridge and your strawberries are starting to get a little squishier than maybe you necessarily want to eat. They don't stink, they're not rotten. That's more what we're getting in. We're not getting the ones that are fuzzy and things are crawling out of them. We're getting the ones that hit a point of, they cannot be sold.
Now, what are some of your supplies, like Walmart,
So in Massachusetts, we have relationships with, we have food waste partners that have partnered with us. Companies like Starbucks have identified that they will send us waste. Chobani Yogurt, the Hood factory is right next door to our site up there. So we do have a good relationship with dairy farms, we have a relationship with breweries, a lot of brewery waste.
I'm sure you get a lot of Bud Light coming up here soon.
We may, but hopefully we don't get the volume.
We already take stuff from Anaerobic.
Yeah, hopefully we don't get up with the volume that happened during COVID. We had a farmer tour in last summer, and he walked in and there were kegs of beer, and I thought the poor man was gonna cry. Between the kegs of beer and the mangoes in the corner, and he was like, oh my, I can't, I gotta go. And then the yogurt came in, and he was a dairy farmer, and he was just heartbroken. It is astounding the good condition of the food that comes into the facility. And it's astounding the amount of food that comes into the facility.
So it's more gonna be grocery stores and packages, more so, or less than restaurants throwing trash out?
We can take it, but it is more manufacturing food materials.
When we visited the one in Agawam, Massachusetts, it was all, there was like four pallets of beer, 4 pallets of Snapple, and everything was on a pallet, and then it got dumped into the thing. I didn't see anything that was like spoiled. It was all packaged, that stuff you might see at like BB's, you know, things like that. That's stuff that you can buy, and it's dented, it's, you know, on the production line, someone went in with a Sharpie, and then you can't come out, they come out, and they don't have a Sharpie in their pocket. All that food has to go somewhere. And it's more along that lines. And then also, you know, food manufacturing, places like Hershey, Land O'Lakes has a butter processing facility out in Carlisle. Stuff that comes out the end of that would be more of the tanks.
Are we gonna be taking anything from any of the other dairy farmers in the area as far as manure goes?
No. The reason, and there's a reason for it. We run them with a single dairy farm because, first of all, we end up with a good relationship with Jared. But if we operate this thing under the assumption that 2 farms have to maintain operation for the next 20 years, the risk points become increasingly higher and our risk of failure becomes higher. If we get one really good partner, we have a better our operational risk comes down.
Yes.
A question with the zoning. How is the township going to handle this if it's commercial?
Well, we have to discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different options. Like I said, there's a lot of examples from other municipalities where they have anaerobic digesters that are defined in the ordinance and then permitted, but usually either by special exception or conditional use, which means you need to go through another hearing, either before the zoning hearing board or the supervisors before you can get approval. So there's a review process before you even get to land development. So that's typically how most of them have been established. I mean, the term commercial and ag are sometimes hard to delineate because a farm is a commercial operation. It's just, does this fit into that? And I think that's what the zoning changes would need to be reviewed by the supervisors to say, yeah, this makes sense, we can live with this, or no, we don't like how that you know. So I think that's the discussion and the dialogue and the back and forth. Ultimately, it's a legislative decision, so that means it's up to the supervisors to decide whether this is something that they feel would
Well, I
be.
think this is gonna be a group effort. I mean, this is our planning commission, this is our engineer, this is our code enforcer. I mean, the board actually went out and we talked to an environmental scientist, so we are gonna have to confer about this and.
Yeah, I just meant it's not like there's not a requirement, it's a policy decision, and you're right, the best policies are made with the most information. I am a firm believer, the more information, the better. You make better decisions when you have more information. So, I think that's what we're hoping to do.
Did you have another question? And did you, one more?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I plan to research for my own knowledge what happened to property values in Pennsylvania that are near these digesters. So I think I understood that I can get that list from the EPA, but I think I also understood that the Ag Preservation Society had already approved this idea. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how do I get a copy of that report to review it myself?
So I haven't received a hard copy yet. I would listen to the meeting was March 30th. I would listen to the meeting online. I've gotten an email back that confirmed approval, but I have not gotten a formal approval letter yet. So I don't have anything in writing yet that I can.
Is there a meeting that I can view?
I believe it is online. It was on their YouTube channel was how I watched it.
Who's YouTube?
The Berks County Farm Preservation Board.
Thank you.
One quick thing, it sounds like the state does not have this very well regulated at this time as far as the digesters go, to the point of, say, what we're seeing with solar farms. And I think to the board's concerns with the ag preservation land and using farming for some type of alternative use.
Yep, different uses.
as they do with the solar farm, have you run into decommissioning requirements in any other states or in Pennsylvania? Is that something?
Pennsylvania, we decommissioning requirements, so the solid waste permit that we will be applying for, which is actually for anaerobic digesters.
So the solid waste permit requires the
decommissioning, a
A lot
decommissioning
of the
plan.
zoning
bonding.
ordinances also require it 6
Yeah.
months after.
And that's what I was, there was a second question, if not them, the zoning, and that basically puts in a requirement of
They have to
posting
pull it
a
out.
certain amount, that if they do, if that operation does belly up or for some reason
We
just
end
goes
after
out,
20 years, what are you talking
you
about?
have
He
to
loves
return.
us. We operate to the fullest extent of the property, and then we leave it in the condition that is dictated in the, in the decommissioning plan. Stop trying to shut me down early.
Or what she's explained.
Hey, what permits did you apply for through DEP?
So DEP, air and solid waste.
Air and solid waste,
Yeah.
there's no discharge though.
No discharge.
Well, there'll be a NPDS permit that
No, sorry, yes, there's a stormwater,
So that
but
will-
that's not discharge from the facility, that's the management of the stormwater that runs through the property.
I have one more question.
Yeah?
The methane,
Yes.
that you're not able to pipe it somewhere, then it's gonna be trucked out daily or every other day?
Yes.
Where is that going, if it can't be piped, where will that be stored on the property?
In what location on the property?
Yes. Will it be near any buildings? Will it be self-sustained elsewhere?
So we haven't picked an exact location yet. However, where that's a meter station, it would very likely be stored in the general vicinity of that building. Because the metering station is where we measure, that metering station is the gas monitor. So the upgrade system is, keep changing the numbers around on me, is 17, which is right next to it. So it would be in conjunction with those two facilities, because that's, we try to keep all the same processes together rather than run pipes all over creation. It would be parked there, and it'd be parked in a way that it would not come into contact with other trucks that are entering the property, vehicles for the employees that are on site, things like that.
My concern is, should the property sustain a fire,
Correct. Yeah.
the exposure that it would have to that? That's
Right.
where I'm going.
Right, so no, I understand that. And if there are regulations that are in place that would need to be followed, we'll absolutely comply with existing regulations. Or if that's something you think that needs to be discussed as part of this process, we can absolutely have that conversation as well. Right now, I can't tell you definitively exactly where it is going to be, because this is a tentative plan. This changes on a semi-regular basis. We have brought in engineers to try to figure out, we have our own in-house engineers, we've brought in external engineers, we've brought in yet another team of external engineers. There's a lot of engineering that has to happen in all of this. Some of them are agricultural experts, some of them are digester experts, and it's marrying all of that together. So this is gonna shift around a little bit, but we will make sure that it is someplace where it is not an exposure hazard for, any danger, and if there are setback requirements, we'll take that into account too.
So now 22 will be one giant lagoon?
Correct.
No executive needed, I assume? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion, second, all those in favor?